Very few things in this world are universal truths that go unquestioned. Just as we all know that 2 plus 2 equals 4 and that every life has an expiration date, we also know that sex sells. And anime is perhaps one of the most obvious proofs of that. From beautiful characters to moments that can only be described as suggestive, to say the least, anime often leverages these elements and the audience loves it. These characters and moments undeniably contribute to the success of many series. However, the discussion surrounding fan service, the portrayal of appealing characters, and its role in anime is filled with controversy, especially in the West. A prime example is a post I came across a while ago claiming that blatant fan service objectively makes a series better. According to the post, as long as it doesn't disrupt crucial parts of the story, the fan service is not only harmless but actually deepens your attachment to the characters. The post gained a lot of attention and, unsurprisingly, sparked debate, raising the question: is fan service in anime a problem, or is it always a good thing? This question is deeper than it might seem at first glance. Fan service, in and of itself, isn't inherently a problem. Using physical attraction as a tool for certain characters can actually enhance their depth, emphasizing unique aspects of their personality or traits. For example, they might be extremely confident, have a distinct sense of humor, or even use their looks and charm as a weapon to survive in a dangerous world. When characters are well written, their attractiveness can indeed create a stronger connection with the audience. Intimacy and attraction are natural aspects of the human experience, and when we encounter characters who captivate us in multiple ways, feeling attracted to them adds another dimension to our connection with them. Besides, as I mentioned earlier, there are clear commercial reasons for fan service to exist. People are naturally drawn to attractive characters, and their appeal often contributes significantly to the financial success of certain titles. This is particularly evident in the gaming industry, where a stark contrast exists between games featuring truly attractive characters and those with characters deemed unattractive or considered woke. While this contrast doesn't mean, at least in my opinion, that unattractive characters will inevitably harm a work's commercial success, it's often the case, especially when the audience has specific expectations about how the characters should look. However, it's hard to agree with the claim that blatant fan service is always a good thing. Before I dive into what I consider to be potentially negative aspects of fan service, let me clarify something, because I know if I don't, someone will probably misinterpret everything I'm about to say. This is not a moralist rant. I'm not here to act like I'm better than anyone else. You have the freedom to enjoy whatever you want. As long as you're not harming others, or yourself preferably, there's no judgment from me. That said, everything in life has both a good and a bad side, and fan service is no different. For instance, it's not unusual for anime to rely heavily on fan service to feature weak narratives and one-dimensional characters. Sometimes it's not just a matter of prioritizing looks over substance. It's a complete inability to write something genuinely engaging. These shows end up depending entirely on showcasing certain characters, their looks, their bodies, as their sole selling point to keep the audience interested. Beyond that, the bigger issue is the potential impact exaggerated fan service can have on the audience, especially teenagers who often consume these anime. Age ratings exist for a reason, and in an ideal world, they would be respected. But we all know that's often not the case. In fact, the average age of first exposure to explicit adult content is 13 for boys and 14 for girls. Extremely young teenagers are being exposed to this type of content on a regular basis. Now, watching an anime with occasional fan service is obviously not the same as watching spicy adult content, but it would be naive to believe there's no connection whatsoever. After all, nowadays, anyone is just 15 seconds away from a Rule 34 search on Google for the anime characters they're watching. Exposure to blatant over-sexualization, especially if it leads to the consumption of adult content, can contribute to several real problems, such as objectifying other people, unrealistic expectations of how people should look or act, and even difficulties with relationship dynamics and social interactions in real life. Fan service that exists solely to portray characters in cheap and suggestive ways without contributing to the narrative or character development doesn't really enhance anyone's experience with the anime. It's just there to provoke the audience. A common argument used to defend the over-sexualization of fictional characters is that because they're fictional, they cannot be offended or harmed. Therefore, objectifying them in extreme ways is seen as harmless. I understand the logic behind this argument. Indeed, no character will be harmed by this type of behavior. They're characters, they're fictional. But this argument fails to consider that just because these characters aren't real doesn't mean that they don't represent real people in some way. Anime characters, while fictional, are still symbolic representations of real individuals, even if portrayed in a hyper-stylized manner. Which means that even if no characters are being harmed, it doesn't mean that their hypersexualization has no effect over the audience watching the character. Consider this. Imagine you know someone who consumes lolly adult anime, which at its core is essentially fictional child exploitation, is essentially fictional CP. This person isn't a criminal. There's no direct victim of any crime since the characters are fictional. But would you trust that person to be a caretaker for your children? Well, I bet most people wouldn't, and for a good reason. There's no guarantee that their perspective on fictional children won't influence their perspective on real children. After all, the characters in the content they consume are meant to represent children, even if they're fictional. Sexualizing these characters doesn't directly sexualize a real person, obviously, but it does sexualize a mental construct that symbolizes a real person. When this is done in an exaggerated and distasteful way, it has the potential to cultivate problematic attitudes and mentalities in real life. The way I see it, fan service is a great way to enhance stories and characters that are good and compelling for other reasons. Take Nami and Robin from One Piece, for example. Sure, they have exaggerated proportions and over-the-top jiggle physics here and there, but that's not what One Piece fans reduce them to. Robin in particular is one of my favorite characters in the series, and the Enies Lobby arc remains one of the greatest in the anime in my opinion, partly because of the depth and emotion in her backstory. The best way to incorporate physical appeal and suggestive situations into a story is to start with a good story in the first place, rather than relying solely on selling characters as mere sexual objects. In an anime like Tomo-chan is a Girl, for instance, there's plenty of fan service. But Tomo's love interest, Jun Kubota, values her in multiple ways and treats every girl in the series with respect. He clearly appreciates beauty, but none of the women in the show are ever reduced to mere sexual beings. Striking a balance and using fan service intelligently tends to be the most effective way to engage with the audience and deepen their investment in the characters they love, without diminishing the character's substance or significance. But anyway, what's your take on fan service in anime? Do you think there's too little of it, or maybe too much? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Your support always means a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.